During my second tour in Afghanistan, one night about 1:30, I was walking out of the talk to my hooch. I was about 30, 40 feet outside the protected area of the talk when a rocket lands to the left of me. Then a rocket lands to the right of me. By this time, I'm face down, head in the dirt, flat as can be. And then a rocket lands in front of me. I felt hopeless. I felt terrible. I felt there's nothing I could do. I was shaking. Well, since the Secretary of Defense put out that every soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guard, you name it, every service member had to get the vaccination. In fact, the president, and those were talking about dishonorable discharges. These are good people who wanted to serve in the armed forces. These are our SEALs. Those were the religious exemptions. These are my friends, family. They wanted to throw them out. Well, I felt terrible. I felt there's nothing you could do. We were searching, looking, but the news from all different directions was throw them out. They're terrible people. It seems like a lot of commanders weren't supporting their troops, but a few were. And from those few, some good things have started to happen. Archbishop Broglio today put out a letter, and I think that letter is what has motivated me to create this podcast and started talking and communicating again and getting things done. Well, let me read this letter to you. It's a good sign. Maybe the tide's turning. Maybe we won't lose those good service members who, for one reason or other, a religious exemption, believed in faith or had conscience not to get the vaccination. These are the people we need to retain in the military. Well, let me read that letter without further ado. Archbishop for the Military Services, United States of America, the most revered Timothy P. Broglio, on coronavirus and the sanctity of conscience. Early this year, I affirmed that the Archdiocese for the Military Services, USA, parentheses AMS, clearly encouraged the faithful entrusted to her care to follow the guidance of the Holy See and the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops with regard to COVID-19 vaccines. The Congregation of Doctrine of the Faith, which is the Church's highest doctrine authority, speaking for the Bishop of Rome, has made clear its position on vaccine availability to mitigate the coronavirus pandemic. The USCCB Committee on Doctrine and the Pro-Life Activities have stated that it is morally permissible to receive the COVID-19 vaccination currently available in the United States. On 24 August 2021, the Secretary of Defense issued a memorandum directing the mandatory vaccinations of all service members against COVID-19. Since then, some service members have refused to take the vaccine and have requested religious accommodations through the Religious Freedom of Restoration Act. This circumstance raises the question of whether the vaccine's moral permissibility precludes an individual from forming a sincerely held religious belief that receiving the vaccine would violate his conscience. It does not. Pfizer and Moderna vaccines were tested using an aborted derived cell line. That type of link has been for centuries considered remote material cooperation with evil and is never sinful. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine was developed, tested, and is produced with aborted derived cell lines. That vaccine is, therefore, more problematic. If it were the only vaccine available, it would be morally permissible, but the faithful Catholic is to make known his or her preference for a more morally acceptable treatment. The Congregation of the Doctrine of Faith examined these moral concerns and judged that receiving these vaccinations does not constitute formal cooperation with abortion and is therefore not sinful. Notwithstanding the moral permissibility of these vaccines, the Church treasures her teaching on the sanctity of conscience. There he is alone with God. Those voices echo in the depths. St. Paul VI wrote, "In all his activities, a man is bound to follow his conscience in order an end and purpose of life. It follows that he is not to be forced to act in a manner contrary to his conscience, nor, on the other hand, is he to be able to restrain from acting in accordance with his conscience, especially in matters of religion." Accordingly, no one should be forced to receive the COVID-19 vaccine if it would violate the sanctuary of his or her conscience. Individuals possess the civil right not to be hindered in leading their lives in accordance with their conscience, even if an individual's decisions seem erroneous or inconsistent to others. Conscience does not lose its dignity. The belief permeates Catholic moral theology as well as First Amendment jurisprudence. As stated by the United States Supreme Court, religious beliefs need not be acceptable, logical, consistent, or comprehensive to others in order to merit First Amendment protection. The denial of religious accommodation or punitive or adverse personal actions taken against those who raise earnest, conscience-based objections would be contrary to federal law and moral responsibility. Those who refuse the COVID-19 vaccine must continue to act in charity for those neighbors and the common good by undertaking means to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 through wearing face coverings, social distancing, undergoing routine testing, quarantining, and remaining open to receiving treatments should one become available that is not derived from or tested with aborted derived cell lines. Signed, Timothy P. Broglio, Archbishop of the Military Services, USA, 12 October 2021.